Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of my Victorian ensemble endeavors. So in this video I'm going to make a shawl which will match my Victorian walking skirt that I made in my last video. I'll link that down below in case you missed it. And my goal is, sorry, Angus just got here to help. And my goal is to make a complete Victorian outfit that I can wear together with the skirt. So since I didn't have a pattern that I could go off of for this particular project, my first step is research. Now, the first thing I decided to start with was a 1969 reprint of the 1902 Sears Roebuck catalog. I just wanted to see if there was anything in the catalog that I would be comfortable remaking as this project. Unfortunately, I wasn't really able to find anything. I found some shawls, but they were all just kind of the "this is a triangle of fabric" style of shawl, and that's not quite what I was looking for. So my next step was to go straight back to my Survey of Historic Costume, which is basically a class that I took in college, and I have used the textbook many times when I'm researching. So as I was going through the Romantic period, which is the middle part of the 1800s section, I stumbled across a garment called a pelerine, and this was described by the book as basically like a wide shawl slash cape that went over the shoulders, came down a little bit over the bosom, and I thought, that's probably what I want to do. I didn't really like the first two examples that I saw in the book, but I did come across one that looked pretty interesting, and I was thinking that I could probably make some sort of variation on that. My last step of research was to go ahead to the Costume Institute of the Met Museum. Once I had a search term, pelerine, I was able to look up a huge amount of examples and take a look basically at not only cut, but also how the garment's draped, any decoration that was added, and anything that I might want to look at to see if I could make this something that would be, you know, not only interesting, but also as accurate as I can be with the fabric that I'm using. Now, most of these were in some sort of lace. A lot of them were white, one or two were black, and I'm not making mine in lace, I'm just making it in a regular fabric. The fabric that I'm using for the lining of a pelerine is actually an abandoned project, and I figured I would just reuse the fabric so that I didn't have to run out and buy more. It's just a little bit more environmentally friendly this way. Okay, this looks pretty good. I think I'm happy with the fit. Not seeing anywhere I really need to adjust, so that means that the lining is ready to go and we can cut out the fashion fabric, the other layer of it. The next step is to grab my quilting ruler and add a 1/2 inch of seam allowance on all sides. Now, these are not actually stitch lines, that's not the purpose of this. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn those seam allowances under, press them underneath, and then attach both layers of fabric together with the seam allowances turned in, and then I'm going to just add stitching as close to the edge as I can make it. And I'm gonna end up with a garment that's fully reversible because I won't have any like awkward looking seams on the underside. All right, here's our two halves of the shawl ready to be put together. Good morning. So I have spent the last couple of days working on getting this ready to go. And unfortunately, I have realized that I have to change things about it. So basically, I ironed everything, I folded the edges over, and I wanted to do like a double fold of the edges so that instead of having this fabric fold over the lining fabric, I wanted to make this reversible. And so what I did was I finished all the edges separately, which took me literally about 2 days. It's, you know, 8 to 10 hours of work. And then I realized that it doesn't match up in most of the places. It's just like slightly off, and then at the corners are a disaster. So I think what I want to do is take this out and actually go back and just cut the seam allowance off the lining and just overlap the fashion fabric over the lining fabric. That literally would have been half as much work as I did, and now I have to go take that work out and do it the way that I think it's going to look best. So I'm honestly kind of frustrated about that, but you know what? It is what it is. So, well, I am annoyed at this piece of fabric. We're going to put it aside and we're going to work on the sleeves. So, you may be thinking, you said sleeves, shawls don't have sleeves. You're correct, shawls do not have sleeves. However, when I was looking through the Costume Institute, there were several of the pelerines that I saw where the draping kind of looked like they could have had sleeves, and some of the larger, kind of longer ones looked as though they were styled in such a way that the extra draping was supposed to imitate sleeves. So although none of those had pictures where I could look closer and see, is this a sleeve or is it not? Certainly it's plausible that somebody might have added sleeves to it, and because I like to be extra, I am going to make my sleeves detachable. So I did make some modifications to the pattern. So this is, I'm gonna need to scooch this down because I'm actually adding about 1 inch up at the top here, 3/4, half, 1/4, and then this is where it'll meet up with the rest of the pattern, because I want the sleeve head to have kind of more of a shelf to sit up over the shoulder, and I'm gonna be putting buttons on it in order to attach to the shawl. So I need it to be not something that's gonna drag everything down. I need it to be able to just sit up, sit over, so I'm just adding that little modification there. Because I am flatlining this, I am going to just put some tacking into it to make sure that the lining doesn't move around. It's nothing fancy, this is just a sleeve, so I'm just going to do 1 line of tacking down and then 1 line over, and then after that it should be ready to stitch the sleeve together. So there is one problem with this pattern that I hadn't anticipated, and I should have, but live and learn, which is that this is an overlayer. So I used a regular dress and shirt pattern, but this is meant to be something I can wear over another dress or shirt, etc., which means that this is going to be too tight. So I went back and I just cut a little gusset, and I'm putting this in. I haven't lined the gusset yet, but it fits much better now. I just wish that I'd thought of that before I'd cut it, because then I could have just cut it all of one piece. Alright, we have obtained sleeves. This one I have pressed the seams open so I can start finishing them. This one I just finished up, so I'm about to press the seams. The iron setup is heating up currently. Here is where we currently are. I finished the hemming for the gusset that I had to add unexpectedly, and then the rest of the seam, and now I'm just finishing the edges. I probably should have tacked this down. I didn't feel like doing that, so it's just pinned. And then once I'm done with this one, I want to finish the other sleeve today and then start back in on figuring out whatever the heck I'm doing to finish the edges of the shawl. Every so often when I am lint rolling a project, I very much get the urge to cut out the middleman, because like, so much fluff. Good afternoon. I have finished the sleeves, although I, as you can see by this line, still have to do the final iron on them, and I have also decided what to do about the overall shawl. I actually, when I looked at it, A, I didn't want to take all of my work out and do it again, and B, I realized that it actually mostly fit, and there were only a couple of places where it didn't match up exactly. So what I did was I went through, and any places where it did match up exactly, I've tacked it down, and I decided for the corners I'm just gonna leave them, honestly. No, they don't match up exactly, but it is what it is, and it actually doesn't bother me that much. Because it's the corners, I could pretend it was intentional. Only you will know that it's not. And then what I'm gonna do is that I've marked, you probably can't see it, but I will attempt. I've marked with pins the places where it doesn't quite match up, and I'm gonna go back and just take out only the stitching on the areas where it doesn't match, and then just iron them a little bit farther in, essentially, and then I will be able to actually tack it through and stitch it down normally. For the finishing edge, I am just doing a regular hem stitch. I know that seems kind of weird because these are supposed to match up exactly, but I am overlapping it just a touch underneath the fashion fabric layer, and I just wanted something that was gonna be quick since I had to take some work out for this. And also something that was relatively invisible. Good noontide. I wanted to film at this awkward angle because Angus is just, he's so cute. Look at how cute he is. Anyways, so we are down to the last step, finally, which is buttons and buttonholes. And the first part of that is I need to actually try the shawl on and fit it for the buttonholes. In order to place the buttonholes, the first thing I have to do is just try everything on together. So here's the shawl. Yes, I still need to take the tacking threads out. No, I have not done that yet. Sue me. Alright, here's the shawl. They're cute. And then next, the sleeves. So, you know, in retrospect, I probably should have put these on first. I never claimed to be a professional. Oh, awesome, this one's got cat hair on it. Just lint rolled everything too. These also still need like a final iron, but I will do that after I finish the fitting. Alright, cool. So here we have everything together. It's an interesting double layer effect. Okay, I have decided where to put the buttonholes, and these are our button friends. Let me see if I can get them a little closer. Come on, focus. There we go. So they're not, you know, Victorian. These are probably plastic, but they had this little flower detail on them that I loved, so I picked these up, and of course it helps that it's the right number. So many buttons at Joann's have 3 buttons, and I didn't want to buy 2 of these. Here's our buttonholing setup. We've got thread. You need very, very sharp scissors to cut buttonholes. If you're a fancy person, you have buttonhole chisels. I am not a fancy person. And then I've got my little wax cake. I know it's probably a little hard to see given the print, but here's our first buttonhole marked out in blue tailor's chalk, and then I added a little pencil dot on either side just to tell me to go beyond that 1/2 inch mark, and we are now going to very carefully slice this buttonhole open. Alright, next step is whip stitching this. So for the actual buttonhole stitch, you put your needle through the fabric as close to the last stitch as you possibly can. Then you're going to loop the thread around the top of the needle, and then as you pull the needle through, you're going to kind of just keep that loop at the edge and tighten the thread down, so you're going to have a little tiny knot just next to it, and that basically is that's going to be what the button wears against, and it'll make a much more hard-wearing edge. Alright, so full disclosure, I did not end up making 4 buttonholes because I cut the first one too big, and I didn't realize it until after I was done with sewing, and then I was like, oh, you know, let me just try it on the button, and it, like, literally the button just slipped right through, and I got so annoyed with it that I put the project down for a couple days, and so that this video is going to post a week late, but anyways, then I got over myself and decided, you know what, I still want to make this work. I'm going to just use some snaps instead. This is a history-bounding project anyways. I'm not married to the idea of using buttons. I'm just gonna use some snaps instead. I'm putting those on right now because the point of this is to get, you know, a wearable, good piece. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yes, buttons would have been more Victorian, but like, is this fabric choice Victorian? No, not at all. So, you know, it's fine. This is not the YouTube channel to come to if you want, like, a perfect project anyways. I'm always going to be upfront about my mistakes, and the point of this is to persevere and get wearable items, and sometimes I mess up. I mean, sewing is one of my favorite things to do. I love sewing, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't go wrong sometimes. Thank you for joining me on this, and I hope that you enjoy the reveal. Hi, baby cat. Yes, you are so baby. Hello, pretty boy. I'm trying to sew over here and he's just so cute.